Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Easy English StoryLab. Today, we will practice English with a shadowing English story for B1 to B2 learners. Listen carefully, pause the video, repeat after me. Copy the pronunciation, rhythm, and emotion. One day, I opened my bag and found a strange key inside. Let's begin the story. My name is Laura. I am 26 years old, and I live in a busy city. I work in a small design studio near the center of town. My job is interesting, but sometimes it is also stressful. Most days, I wake up early, drink coffee, and hurry to the office before the traffic becomes too heavy. Last Tuesday started like any other normal day. I woke up at 7 in the morning, checked my phone, and got ready for work. Outside my window, the city was already alive. Cars were moving, people were walking to work, and the sound of buses filled the streets. I quickly made breakfast and packed my bag. My bag is a simple black bag that I carry every day. Inside it, I usually keep my wallet, my phone, a notebook, and a few other small things. Nothing special. Or at least, that's what I thought. That morning, I was running a little late, so I left the apartment quickly and walked toward the bus stop. The air was cool, and the sky was bright blue. It looked like it would be a beautiful day. When I arrived at the office, my coworker, Megan, was already there. "Good morning, Laura," she said while looking at her computer. "Morning," I replied, putting my bag on the desk. The morning passed quickly. We had several meetings and a lot of work to finish. Around lunchtime, I decided to go to a small cafe across the street to buy a sandwich. I grabbed my bag and walked out of the building. The cafe was busy, but the line moved quickly. After a few minutes, I bought my sandwich and sat down at a small table near the window. As I opened my bag to take out my wallet, something strange happened. I saw a small silver key inside my bag. I froze for a moment. "That's strange," I whispered. I picked up the key and looked at it carefully. It was not a normal house key. It looked older, and it had a small number carved in the metal. 317. I tried to remember if I had ever seen this key before, but I was sure I hadn't. "This isn't mine," I said quietly. I searched through my bag again. My wallet was there, my phone was there, my notebook was there. Everything looked normal, except for the key. Maybe someone accidentally put it in my bag, but that seemed impossible. My bag had been with me the whole time. After lunch, I returned to the office, but I could not stop thinking about the key. During the afternoon meeting, I kept turning the small object in my hand, wondering where it came from. Finally, Megan noticed. "What's that?" she asked. "A key," I said. "Well, I can see that," she laughed, "but where did you get it?" "That's the problem," I replied. "I have no idea." Megan looked curious. "Maybe it opens something interesting," she said jokingly. I smiled, but inside I felt uneasy. When the workday ended, I walked back home slowly. The key was still in my pocket, and every few minutes I touched it to make sure it was still there. The number 317 kept repeating in my mind. 317. When I reached my apartment building, I suddenly stopped walking. My eyes moved toward the elevator. Above the elevator doors was a list of apartment numbers. 301, 302, 303. And then I saw it. Apartment 317. I stared at the number for several seconds. My heart began beating faster. I had lived in this building for almost a year, but I had never noticed apartment 317 before. Slowly, I took the key out of my pocket and looked at it again. 317. The same number. I felt a strange feeling in my chest. Maybe it was just a coincidence, but something inside me told me it wasn't. I stepped into the elevator. My finger slowly pressed the button for the 3rd floor. And suddenly, I realized something. I had no idea what I was about to find behind the door of apartment 317. The elevator doors closed slowly, and the small space became quiet. I looked again at the silver key in my hand. The number 317 shone softly under the elevator light. My heart was beating faster than usual. Why am I doing this? I whispered to myself, but something inside me was very curious. I wanted to know the truth. The elevator stopped on the 3rd floor. The doors opened with a soft sound. The hallway was quiet and empty. The lights were warm and yellow, and the carpet made my footsteps almost silent. I stepped out of the elevator and looked around. Apartment 311 was on my left. Apartment 315 was a little farther down the hall. Then I saw it. At the end of the hallway, apartment 317. The door looked normal. It was made of dark wood, just like the other doors in the building. There was a small metal plate with the number 317 on it. But something felt strange. The hallway around the apartment looked unused. The carpet near the door looked older, and there were no welcome mats or decorations like the other apartments had. I walked slowly toward the door. My steps felt heavy. What if someone lives here? I thought. What if they see me? But when I reached the door, I noticed something unusual. There was no sound inside. No television, no voices, nothing. The apartment seemed completely silent. I stood there for a moment, holding the key. Maybe I should go back, I whispered. But then I remembered something. The key had appeared inside my bag. Someone had put it there, or something had happened that I didn't understand. Slowly, I lifted my hand toward the door. I knocked softly. Knock. 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 I waited. Nothing. No footsteps, no voices, no movement. I knocked again, a little louder this time. Still nothing. My heart was beating very fast now. I looked down at the key again. Maybe this key really opened this door. I hesitated for a moment. This is probably a bad idea, I said quietly. But my curiosity was stronger than my fear. Slowly, I pushed the key into the lock. It fit perfectly. My breath stopped. This can't be real, I whispered. I turned the key slowly. Click. The lock opened. For a few seconds, I just stood there, staring at the door. Part of me wanted to run away, but another part of me needed to know what was inside. I slowly pushed the door open. The apartment was dark, very dark. Only a small amount of light from the hallway entered the room. "Hello?" I called softly. My voice echoed slightly in the empty space. No answer. I stepped inside carefully. The air inside the apartment smelled old, like dust and forgotten furniture. I found a light switch on the wall and turned it on. The room filled with light. What I saw made my heart race. The apartment looked abandoned. There was a couch, a table, and a few shelves, but everything was covered in dust. It looked like no one had lived here for a long time. But something on the wall caught my attention. Several photographs were hanging there. I walked closer, and then my stomach tightened. The photos were of me. Me walking to work, me sitting in the cafe across the street, me leaving my apartment building. My heart started beating wildly. "Who took these?" I whispered. There were at least 10 photos. All of them showed moments from my daily life, moments I didn't even know someone was watching. Suddenly, I felt a cold wave of fear. Someone had been watching me. Someone who knew where I lived. Someone who had access to apartment 317. And someone who had somehow placed the key inside my bag. My hands began to shake. I turned around quickly, ready to leave the apartment. But then I noticed something else. On the table in the middle of the room, there was a notebook, and on the front cover, written in black ink, were 3 words: "For Laura." For a moment, I stood still, staring at the notebook. The words "For Laura" were written clearly on the cover. My heart started beating faster. "Who wrote this?" I whispered. The apartment was silent. The air felt cold and heavy. I slowly walked toward the table and picked up the notebook. My hands were shaking a little. I opened the first page. There was only one sentence. "If you are reading this, you finally came." I frowned. "What does that mean?" I said quietly. I turned the page. The next pages were full of writing. At first, I thought it was a diary, but after reading a few lines, I realized something very strange. The pages were about me. One sentence said, "Laura moved into the building last year. She looked tired, but still helped an old man pick up his newspaper." My eyes widened. I remembered that moment. It happened on my first day in the building. But how could someone know that? I turned another page. Another entry said, "Every morning she walks to the cafe across the street. She sits near the window and drinks coffee before work." My heart began to beat faster. Someone had been watching me. But why? I kept reading. A few pages later, I saw another message written in a different style. "My name is Daniel. I used to live in apartment 317. I leaned closer to the page. A few months ago, I became very sick and had to stay in the hospital for a long time." The handwriting looked weaker on the next lines. "During that time, I often felt lonely. One day, I looked out the window and saw you helping an old woman cross the street." I remembered that day. It had been raining, but the woman looked scared to cross the road alone. I helped her reach the other side safely, but I never thought anyone noticed. The next sentence made my chest feel tight. Seeing small moments like that gave me hope. It reminded me that there are still kind people in the world. I slowly turned to the last page. There was one final message. "If you find this notebook, it means I am probably gone, but I wanted you to know something important." My hands trembled slightly. The last line said, "Your kindness made my difficult days brighter. Thank you for being the kind of person the world needs." For a long moment, I could not move. The quiet apartment suddenly felt very different. It no longer felt scary. It felt peaceful.
I closed the notebook slowly and placed it back on the table. Then I looked around the room one last time. "Thank you, Daniel," I whispered softly. A few minutes later, I left apartment 317 and walked back toward the elevator. The key was still in my hand, but now it was no longer a mystery. It was a reminder that even small acts of kindness can change someone's life.
Great job! Now play the video again. Pause after each sentence and repeat out loud. Copy the pronunciation, rhythm, and emotion. This is the shadowing technique, and it will help you speak English more naturally. If you enjoyed this story, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and write a comment. See you in the next story on Easy English Story Lab.